Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about former President Donald Trump's ever-evolving legal issues. I know there have been a lot of major developments in a bunch of different cases this week, but the thing I want to talk about right now is what happened in the Mar-A-Lago documents case. The DC appeals courts ruled today, after a very quick set of briefings, that they were going to uphold the lower court's decision that Trump's lawyer, Evan Cochran, is not covered by attorney-client privilege and that he must testify to the grand jury as well as provide them documents such as his attorney's notes and any other files that he may have generated while serving as Trump's lawyer over the course of this whole classified documents issue. So, let's quickly talk about what this ruling means and how things might play out from here. So, let's start off with the ruling itself. A three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit stated that they would not enjoin a lower court ruling which required Evan Cochran to provide testimony and documents to the Department of Justice as a part of their investigation into former President Trump's handling of classified documents at Mar-A-Lago. Now, generally speaking, conversations between a client and their attorney are privileged, and there's no way for prosecutors to compel that kind of testimony, as it is part of your right to be properly represented. If you can't have an honest conversation with your attorney about what's happened, it just makes it very difficult for them to defend you properly. However, if it happens that you are trying to commit some sort of crime or fraud through your attorney, that privilege can be lifted in what is known as the crime-fraud exception, very apt name. So, what the lower court ruled is that it is likely that Donald Trump either colluded with Evan Cochran, and they jointly made a false statement to the DOJ regarding the documents that were held at Mar-A-Lago, or that Donald Trump lied to Evan Cochran, thereby putting him in a position to make a false statement to the FBI. Either way, both the lower court and the appeals court have said that it is more likely than not that the DOJ will be able to prove that there is a crime-fraud exception here, and therefore Evan Cochran does have to testify. Now, I want to make it clear that this appeal is not over. However, the appeals court saying that they're not going to enjoin the lower court ruling means that they do think that the DOJ is most likely going to succeed in their appeals process. So, where do things go from here? Well, in the immediate short term, Evan Cochran is going to have to provide documents and testify before the grand jury. The documents will tell whatever story they tell, but his testimony might be more or less informative depending on how involved Evan Cochran was in this scheme. If he was actively aware that Donald Trump was trying to withhold documents from the government that he knew were classified, then he's likely to plead the fifth and we won't get too much out of Cochran. However, if he wasn't aware of it, and Donald Trump perhaps lied to his lawyer and said, yes, we don't have any more documents here, and then Cochran repeated that lie to the FBI believing it to be true, that testimony would help provide a good sense of Trump's state of mind, because at that point, he knows he's doing something illegal, and that's why he's lying to his lawyers in order to help provide this veneer of legality where, yes, my lawyer is testifying, we have no documents here. These aren't the documents you're looking for. Go away. But this appeal process is not over, and depending on how it plays out, none of this evidence might be used. Because if Cochran and Trump are able to succeed on their appeal, either when it's fully reviewed by this three-judge panel, taken to the full Court of Appeals in the D.C. Circuit, or even to the Supreme Court, if they win, they will be able to suppress this evidence, so it won't be able to be brought up at trial, and the DOJ might be enjoined from using it in certain investigative processes. But, admittedly, the cat might be a little bit out of the bag at that point, and it might be a little bit hard to get it back in. So, we'll have to see how this plays out. Now, in the long term, none of this looks good for the former president. Given the fact that the appeals court heard this case on an incredibly expedited schedule, as well as the fact that they did not enjoin the lower court ruling, means that they are fairly convinced by the DOJ's argument that there is a crime-fraud exception. And where there is a crime-fraud exception, there is, more likely than not, a crime or fraud being committed by the client, in this case, former President Donald Trump. So, given the fact that the DOJ has proven this to not one but two courts, they're definitely going to continue this investigation, and it is certainly a confidence boost towards bringing any future indictments. Now, when it comes to Cochran's testimony, obviously we have to wait and see how that plays out, but long term, he is likely going to provide a lot of valuable information to the DOJ. The documents will obviously tell the story of their own, and even if Cochran is involved in some way, and he does plead the fifth initially, the DOJ always has the option to provide him with some kind of deal and say, hey, We will offer you immunity or some kind of lesser charge if you testify against Donald Trump. And if I was Evan Cochran, I might look at the likes of Michael Cohen, Lena Habba, Sidney Powell, and all the other former Trump lawyers who are facing their own investigations and other legal issues, and I might say, well, I will take that deal. Here's what I know. And the fact that they are able to breach this attorney-client privilege and get that information from Cochran could be very damaging to the former president and really put him in a tough legal situation going forward. But, as I said, there is still some time to go in this appeals process, and we will have to keep our eyes on it. But for now, at least, it does look like the walls have closed in ever so slightly more on the former president. Think about it.